small hip circle in Middle Eastern dance is one of the sexiest isolations, and it's also one of the hardest. It takes a lot of practice to gain control of that movement, and it uses all the muscles in the pelvic area. So we're going to break it down into the 4 corners, and then we're going to try and smooth it out. The sides of the small hip circle are the singles. Hip drops right and left. Right glute, left glute, right glute, left glute. The front and back of the small hip circle is the lower ab isolation. Pulling from the lower abs, nice flat back. The back of the small hip circle, easy, is the neutral spine. It's not the hyperextended lower back. We're going to pull and crunch and release. Pull and crunch and release. So the small hip circle in Middle Eastern dance is a close relative of the African small hip circle, which we've all seen if you have a television set on MTV. The African small hip circle reaches back, back, back. They keep the downbeat in the back. Hip hop is a close relative of West African dance, and that's where this small hip circle comes from. Back, back, back. In Middle Eastern dance, the accent is to the front, front, and crunch, and crunch. And each one of these little circles is like a little sit-up. It's really active through the abdominal area with the glutes supporting it on the sides. So the actual range of motion of the small hip circle is a circle to the front. Similarly, the chest circle is a chest circle to the front, and we don't explore the back half of the circle. In Middle Eastern dance generally, the small hip circle is front and around to a neutral spine instead of front to back. Front to back. This position, if you're not very careful and you don't have very strong abs to support the pressure in the lower back, can really easily lead to injuries. So we're going to try to avoid it. If you want to use it in performance for accents or for different things in interpreting the music, that's fine. Every artist has their preference and choice. But when you practice, try not to let yourself move your spine into this position. Strengthen the lower abs, strengthening through the abdominal wall, and pull it towards the front. Pull, pull. If you're used to hitting that accent in the back and you find yourself doing it to the front for 2 counts and then kind of letting it release to the back, really try and have the focus and think of where the shape of that hip circle is underneath your rib cage. Try and keep it to the front. Try not to let it ease back. Let's try some with music. variation on the small hip circle. We're going to go right and left, and we're going to do 2 small hip circles to the center. We're going to leave the path of the small hip circle and come onto a hip drop. Flex the glute to bring it back up and out, and come around the back into the hip circle to drop. Up, around the back, into the circle, and drop on the right. Lift it up, bring it around the back, into the hip circle, and drop on the left. Everyone's body has asymmetries. Sometimes the direction clockwise is very easy, counterclockwise is very difficult. Everyone's body is put together differently, but really try and reinforce your weak direction. What you're trying to look for as you practice slowly is where the connection isn't smooth, and you can only practice as quickly as you can move through these weak areas smoothly. So really try to build control as you do this. The flat figure eight is a combination of the hip slide and a twist. It takes place on the horizontal plane and does not have a vertical component. So the vertical figure eights is a completely separate move from the flat figure eights. Let's move through it slowly, and then we'll pick up a little bit of speed. You can open your feet a little less than hip width apart. Give yourself a little bit of space. Bend the knees, keeping the tail tucked. We're going to slide out to the side and engage the obliques. Since this is a horizontal movement, it will be dominated by the obliques. The glutes will work to reinforce the tuck and keep your lower back flat. When we add the twist, we're going to twist the right hip forward. Notice that everything along the spine twists with the hip, but my shoulders don't come along. So what you feel is a little stretch across the front of your chest, trying to keep your shoulders square to the front, even as your hips have tilted 90 degrees nearly. So we're going to twist the hip, right hip forward, slide out in the hip slide, and pull it around. Twist the hip back, get the left hip forward, and keep the shoulders square to the front. Keep the tail tucked, engage the glutes, slide it out on the hip slide, and pull it around. Twist the hip forward, slide it out with the hip slide, and pull it around. What you don't want to happen is your upper body to follow along with your hips. So your arms and shoulders don't follow the motion of the hips, only the chest. That's connected along the spine. It's hard to separate that. But you give the illusion that it's only happening in the lower body by keeping your shoulders square to the front. Take time with it, really carve the motion out with the muscles. Keep your glutes engaged underneath that movement. When you release the glute, the hip starts to dip down. You want to keep those hips on the horizontal plane and don't let it come out so far that it sinks into the joint of the hip. Keep it tucked and keep it supported underneath with the glute. Engage the glute. Let's try it with music.